stand together, we'll never fall. We can make a difference.
Well, hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the All Around Growth Podcast. My name is Rob Kaiser, and I am your host. Today is Wednesday, October 19th, 2022, and this is episode number 446 of a show where we co-create life together, a show where you join me with my family on our small farm and homestead as we grow all around. And today, a show where you join me and the audience as we go live here in just a couple of minutes. So get ready for something new, something that we're going to experiment with today, and something for those of you out there in the podcast audience may sound a little bit different than any other recording. So stay tuned for that. But before we jump into that and actually go live, let's go ahead and take care of a little housekeeping. First of all, as you know, the show is sponsored by York Meadow Farm. We are actively, I guess you could say we are actively seeking additional show sponsors. If you are interested in sponsoring the show and collaborating with us here on the homestead, let me reframe that. If you're interested in collaborating with me on the show in a manner like I collaborate with York Meadow Farm, then let me know. And the way in which I collaborate with York Meadow Farm through the show is the promotion of the show. They sponsor the show and they provide listeners with a discount for supporting me in the way that they do. The way in which you would support the listeners and provide a discount to your product is something that we would negotiate out, but we can talk about that later. What you get with York Meadow Farm is a good discount. You get 25% off by using the code ALLAROUNDGROWTH at checkout when you shop for fermented foods and bath and body products. Chances are you are using some of those products already. Chances are you may be interested in buying certain products because of the nutritional benefit they have, or for products or ingredients, maybe more specifically, that they do not have. Bath and body products, all natural, York Meadow Farm. Fermented foods, healthy probiotics, raw live culture product, York Meadow Farm. Check it out. Use All Around Growth as a discount code at checkout for 25% off. And also check out the show notes for the goal setting workbook. We are getting towards the end of the year. It's weird to think about, but we're in Q4 already, and the goal setting workbook was an integral part of, my life for this year, 2022. And it's been a wild ride this year. It's been a wild ride. And, a big part of that wild ride is going to result in the show today and what we talk about here shortly. So I guess let's just, without further ado, let's get right into that. Check out the show notes for the 2022 goal setting workbook, and let's go ahead and go live. Okay, we are live, and the topic of today's show is homesteading. It's all in your mind. And you see, I do this show a little bit differently than a lot of other people do their shows. I don't edit it, and oftentimes there's not a whole lot of prep work that goes into the show. Sometimes there is. Sometimes I will go ahead and prep show notes. And lately, more often than not, that's been the case. I've done a lot of prep work. I've done a lot of, assembling my notes in a Word document and looking at, the date, the the episode number, the topic, kind of outlining the sponsor, the affiliates, the shout outs, all that stuff, you know. And today I'm walking the dog outside. It's windy. It's cold. And I'm barefoot. And I'm just kind of thinking, I'd like to get back inside, you know, and get to work. I've got a lot of ideas in my mind. And then it can't, you know, it like the idea, the thought just passed through in my mind, like, this isn't like most other homesteads, you know, like where I was in the back there, and in that little corner, yes, the wind was whipping through, but this area is like in a pocket that's surrounded by trees. And when you actually come back here, when you go through the driveway, it opens up, you know, you go through a clearing, you like drive into the woods, but there's a clearing, the woods open up, and then you see this acre pond in the cabin. And I've actually made a little video on this that I'll see if I can link to in the show notes, that takes you on a little mini walking farm tour. And you know, actually in that video, you can see in the back kind of where I was standing this morning in the dark as the wind whipped through, and I hunched over thinking, oh, it's cold, I want to get back inside. And I thought, well, this isn't like many other homesteads. Many other homesteads, you know, are we've got, I don't know if I don't want to touch the laptop. I'm streaming over there. There might be some dings and things like that, but maybe I will see if I can just mute the speakers, and hopefully that doesn't appear to impact the audio quality on the live stream. So again, lots of experiments today, lots of things going on currently while I record the podcast. So guys, if this comes through on the podcast as somewhat of a bit choppy and a bit weird, my apologies. But again, this is, like I said, this is a show where we co-create life together, a show where you guys join me with my small family on our small farm and homestead as we grow all around. You know, this is going to be this show is a work in progress. Our lives are a work in progress, and you know, as this show has evolved from all around growth in these 7 aspects of life, right? You know, financial, physical, personal development, family, spiritual, social, and career. You know, via the goal setting workbook, which I mentioned earlier, the goal setting workbook goes through goals in that order, providing a framework so that we can set goals and actually, you know, make progress in them. But the show's evolved into this thing now where we talk about the 5 W's and how as we grow the family business here at York Meadow Farm. So, you know, this isn't really a topic that hits that directly today, but I think that it's important to talk about this and just sort of talk freely, you know, with no notes, with no preparation, and just wing it, because sometimes that's what you got to do. Now, I have the time available today where I could have sat down and created some content that was a little bit more clear and would have provided a good framework and maybe a better listening experience for those in the audience. But I could have done that a long time ago. I could have put in a lot of editing with this. I could have done a lot of things differently, but I didn't. This is how it is. You know, this is what you get. And And for me, this is what works. And apparently for those of you that listen out there, this is also what works. Now, how this is going to play out in the live stream, I don't know. I tried to set this up in a live stream through the All Around Growth YouTube channel that I set up a while back, but I never did anything with it. There's no videos on there. The few All Around Growth videos that I have are on my own personal channel with the ridiculous amounts of just crap that's accumulated here. There's no rhyme or reason to my channel. I don't even know how many hundreds of videos there are that I've been posting since, well, like for over the past 15 years. This is a ridiculous channel. I'm not even sure who subscribes to this, my own personal YouTube channel. So that's why this is a test stream, that is. Now I'm just rolling with this live on the podcast because, well, for those of you who are new to the show, there was a point in time where, I wanted to start podcasting, but like I didn't really know what to do. And it wasn't so much that I wanted to start podcasting, right? Like I had something inside of me that I had to get out. And it started, like this podcast right here, this All Around Growth podcast started in 2019, as a matter of fact. And I had 10, like I engaged in, I'm not going to go into the history, but there were 10 episodes in late 2019. And it was a series on wellness. Okay, the 10 aspects of wellness as defined by UC Davis, I believe. And then that was it. Like my podcasting experiment was complete. I had a good time with it, but I decided that I wasn't really going to do that. And so in the beginning of 2020, if I'm not mistaken, like for 4 months, I did kind of a video blog on YouTube here. And yeah, it was the 2020 commute series. And I did like 150 video blogs. And that was cool. And I even talked about extracting the audio from those for like B episodes of the All Around Growth podcast. And at that time I was experimenting with calling it the robkaiser.me show and so on and so forth. But I digress. We're not talking about that. We're talking about homesteading and how it's all in your mind. But all of this is related because, like I said, I'm out there walking the dog and I just have this idea. Okay, this homestead isn't like other homesteads. And the way that I'm approaching homesteading isn't like the way other people are approaching homesteading. And this really hit home to me because yesterday, as a matter of fact, I was on the phone, like, on a telephone call. I'm looking for a phone, but I don't have one around. Just like this, having a conversation with someone like we used to do in the olden days, right? And that individual was Brian Norton from Food Forest Farms. And we talked about all kinds of things, but one of the interesting things that he shared with me was just a brief snapshot of his experience at the Self-Reliance Festival in Tennessee recently. And the homestead of, I want to say, John Willis, where the event, I believe, was held. Now, I'll go ahead and link to this in the show notes, which I've done before. But I really should have, been a little bit more active in promoting this in the past and just giving everyone a shout out. But it wasn't really necessary on my part. The event was successful. It really would have been a cool thing to participate in. But hopefully that is something that could be, whether it's that one or other ones. I think that there is something to be said for, active participation in, conferences like this, festivals like this, because it's a great opportunity to network. It's a great opportunity to see how these things are being run. And quite frankly, if you guys watch the walking tour of our homestead earlier, you can see that there's a lot of undeveloped land that we do maintain that would actually make it an excellent site for an event just like that. So participating in these things would be, an optimal way to learn and see what's going on, how other people are doing them, and have conversations with them about the things that they had done differently, what they would have done better, and maybe collaborate with them when we get to the point where we're hosting an event here on the homestead. But, where I originally went with that thought when Brian talked about John's homestead and how he's got, 10 acres, and how Brian was looking at it because he's got 10 acres and all the different things that can be done with 10 acres. And, that's effectively what we've got here. Yes, the homestead is 20 acres, but basically 10 of it's woods. So, we've got a comparable size to John. We've got a comparable size to Brian. And, as soon as Brian mentioned John's homestead, like, all I thought about was like, oh man, like, we're not doing anything like that. Like, we're not homesteaders. Like, what are we doing? Like, what am I doing talking about homesteading? And that's kind of how the topic of today's show came to be. It simply came to be because, like, homesteading is all in your mind. And what I mean by that is that you don't have to have 10 acres to homestead. You don't have to have an acre pond to homestead. You don't have to own land to homestead. You don't have to have livestock to homestead. You don't have to have aquaponic systems to homestead. You don't have to have a commercial kitchen to homestead. You don't have to have, I think you get the point, right? And what I started to do last night was, get caught up in this loop of, I'm not good enough. I'm not a homesteader. I'm not. And again, you get the point. So, homesteading is all in your mind, in that you become what you think about. Okay, this is good. Now, you become what you think about. And this is from Earl Nightingale, The Strangest Secret. And this is something that I listened to for like as part of my daily routine for a long time. Last year, I probably listened to this over 100 times last year, and I did it on a daily basis. And there's some steps outlined in that audio recording from the 1950s from Earl Nightingale called The Strangest Secret. Some tips and some actions that you can take to create and facilitate change in your life, right? And I think what's worth pointing out, so all I can do is share my own journey and my own story, okay, with homesteading, and how I feel justified, if you will, in calling myself a homesteader, and how you should feel justified in calling yourself a homesteader as well. Okay, so what I mean by this is that it's all in your mind. You know, if you don't feel worthy, or if you don't feel justified in calling yourself a homesteader, and you refuse to, then you're not going to be a homesteader. That's it. That's where it ends. You know, if you can understand and be okay and accept the fact that that homesteading is this umbrella that encompasses many different ways and approaches, you know, much like this thing called permaculture, then you, my friend, are also a homesteader. Okay? And there was a point in time for me where the extent of my possessions were basically limited to what I could fit in a small trailer and a 1995 Subaru Impreza, which at that time, simply 15 years ago, which was my prized possession. That was the most valuable thing I owned. I was in my early 30s, around 2010 or so, driving a almost 15-year-old Subaru worth about here's a funny side story about this old Subaru. It was my prized possession. It was the thing that I had that was of most value to me, that I bought for about, I think I paid $1,650 for it. It was this old, faded, just this kind of gnarly, I called it the Green Dragon. And it was a solid vehicle, though. I bought it maybe when it had, I don't even think it had 200,000 miles on it. And I drove that. Where I was going with the story, though, is I eventually was in an accident. I was rear-ended, and I got a check for the damage to the car, which was more than the car was worth. And yeah, I had a salvage title, but I just kept driving that thing, and I drove it for years. Drove it cross country, brought it back here, drove it till it died, and eventually donated it. And that, my friends, is the story of the Green Dragon. And at that time that I owned said Green Dragon, where I was at in life was a point where I had broken up with my girlfriend. I moved out. I had nothing to my name. Like I said, I could fit everything I owned in a simple small U-Haul trailer in this little thing, in my little Subi. Didn't have a place to stay, so I found a place in North County, San Diego. Rented a room in a house with 5 other people, just this big house in San Marcos. And just kind of lived there, you know. Whoops. And when I say I just kind of lived there, I was trying to find my way. And at that time, finding my way involved homesteading and doing what I could to live that life. So what do you do when you're living in San Diego and you're just turned on to the ideas of permaculture, the ideas of Dave Ramsey, the ideas presented by Jack Spirko of the Survival Podcast? So what do? You know, you start planning. And you start acting. And you understand that homesteading is all in your mind. And you set goals. See the show notes for the 2022 goal setting workbook. You try, you fail, and you try again. And more often than not, you fail again. And you keep in mind the old saying, fall down 7 times, stand up 8. This thing of homesteading, it's all in your mind. So what do? Okay, you live somewhere, you have no land, you have no money. What do? All right, meetup.com, localharvest.org, tspc.co. Those are permies.com. 4 solid resources right there. And what I mean by local harvest is you go find farms that do things that you're interested in. Not just farms. This could apply to anything. Okay, you want to learn trades? Welding, carpentry, those are all applicable to the homestead. You know, actual trade, like people like me need people like you that can do things that I can't. Work with electric, do electric. Yeah. That's my brother. Okay. And this is all homesteading in your mind. I can't do this. I can't be a homesteader because I can't grow food. I can't be a homesteader because I don't have any animals. I can't be a homesteader because I have a chronic condition that prevents me from doing certain things. I can't be a homesteader because I'm overweight. Oh, Lord have mercy. Like, all of that, you are where you are in life because that's where you want to be. Like, we all make choices, right? And, I shared something with my family this morning first. And then I shared something with the Telegram group afterwards. The Telegram group is the All Around Growth Podcast Community Chat group, which you can find at t.me/allaroundgrowth. and I shared a link to over 50 follow-along stretching routines. Yeah, stretching, calisthenics, flexibility, mobility exercises. These are things that we should be incorporating into our lives as we get older. Movement is important. And again, it's all in your mind. If you don't think that you can do these things, then you won't. The link to, and I'll link to this in the show notes as well, because like I said, a lot of times I don't do this show like a lot of other people do shows. Oftentimes I will record the show, wing it, and then I'll listen to the show, put together the show notes, the links of things that I talk about, and then drop it like that. A lot of people do it differently. Hey, to each their own, whatever. To each their own, whatever applies to homesteading. It's all in your mind. It applies to anything in life. I mentioned where I was at more than 10 years ago. You know where else I was at more than 10 years ago? I'm talking more like 15 years ago. I was about 100 pounds heavier than I am now. I've put on a few pounds over the past couple of months. But back in June, I realized that I had lost 110 pounds from where I was my heaviest in life. I remember being a big, old, fat fuck, pardon my French, doing routines not dissimilar to the link to all the routines that are in the link in the show notes. And sometimes I did them more frequently than others. Sometimes I didn't do them at all. But one thing I did was I always went back and tried again. The end result was consistency over time. I lost 100 pounds. My family and I talked about goals, dreams 10 years ago. And now, today, we live together on the homestead, and I record from the office as I prepare to get to work here on the homestead in a way that's appropriate for the context of my life as I see homesteading as it applies to me right now. There's going to be a point in time in the future where this homesteading thing is very different than it is now. And that's okay, because where it is now is very different than where it was 10 years ago. So the whole point of today's show is that maybe motivational in a sense, or inspirational in a sense, just in that it's encouragement of a continued understanding that you can do it, that you can build the life and homestead of your dreams, which is something that we used to begin the show with. Building the life and homestead of our dreams. The way in which we introduce the show in the future is probably going to change as well, as we co-create life together. And as you continue to listen and join me with my family on our small farm and homestead as we grow all around, talking about the 5 W's and how, as we grow the family business here at York Meadow Farm, you too will experience the change and transition of the podcast, because one thing is for certain. As we're here in episode number 446 of the show, approaching 500 episodes, this show reflects a lot of change. And there are episodes in the past that, I'm not really that proud of. There are episodes, there's a lot that I think is like questionable out there in the past of this show. And I'm conflicted with all of that, I'm not sure if I want to leave it there or like, I don't know, make it some subscriber only content, who knows? But I guess at the end of the day, should you continue listening to the show, you'll join me along with the ride. Or, that didn't come out right in terms of what I'm trying to say, but I tried to conclude the podcast with some sort of eloquent thing that I might be able to grab a snapshot from for sharing, but I failed with that, guys. So anyways, let's just go ahead and conclude the show. And like I said, homesteading is all in your mind. This is Rob Kaiser, and thank you.
In a world of pain, what can I do? The needs are many and answers a few. People turn away and I wonder why. If I can help somebody, then I want to try. People may think that it's odd that I believe in friendship and love, and truth is always the best way to the world that may seem odd. I'm an odd fellow. I'm an odd fellow. Whoa, whoa. I'm an odd fellow. If we stand together, we'll never fall. We can make a difference and answer the call. You know the times are wasting every day, and we can help somebody along the way. People may think that it's odd that I believe